Now, isn't Jesus a great dinner guest? I mean, come on, he insults those attending and his host. It's like coming to someone's house and saying in a stage whisper, "Don't sit me next to her, she's a terrible gossip." Or saying, "You should know better than to invite me to your house without first asking what I want to eat. You should know better than that." So obviously, because Jesus was never intentionally rude, he has a lesson here. He's not trying to teach us mere table manners. He's pointing to something much greater than a dinner party, and how to act and how not to act in our lives. And our first reading from Sirach sets the stage perfectly. It says, "My child, conduct your affairs with humility, and you will be loved more than a giver of gifts. Humble yourself the more, the greater you are, and you will find favor with God." Humility, then, is the path to God's favor and how to act in our lives. But humility is not about thinking less of ourselves. It's about seeing ourselves honestly in light of God, knowing that God has gifted us. It's about recognizing that everything we have and everything we are is gift from God. I'm reminded of a wedding. The reception was in a grand hall, decorated with lights and flowers, every table carefully set. But when the guests arrived, the doors of the hall were locked. And then something unusual happened. They opened the doors, and they filed in, and there were no name cards on the table. People had to choose their own seats, so some rushed towards the front, eager to be near the bride and groom, while others sat quietly in the back. After everyone settled, the father of the bride stood with a microphone. He said, "Tonight the bride and groom have chosen their special guests, the ones who will sit closest to them." Imagine the murmurs. And then he walked to the back of the hall, inviting forward the people no one else had noticed. The neighbor who had helped mow the lawn, the elderly woman who baked cookies for the family, the teacher who had encouraged their daughter. One by one, the quiet, humble guests were moved to places of honor. The room fell silent as people realized that those who had grabbed the best seats were left behind, while those who sat humbly were lifted up. This is exactly the vision of Sirach and Jesus hands to us today. It says, "The one who humbles himself will be exalted." God sees the hidden things, our acts of service, our sacrifices, our faithfulness when no one is watching. And just as the father of the bride called forward the overlooked guests, so too will our Heavenly Father one day call forward his own children who lived with humility, generosity, and love. That's why Jesus tells us not just to invite friends who can repay us, but to welcome those who can't. The poor, the forgotten, the ones that the world overlooks. And here's the kicker for us. Just because I act in the person of Jesus Christ at this Mass to confect the Eucharist doesn't mean that I'm the only one who's supposed to be inviting guests to the table. Friends, every Mass is a rehearsal for that eternal feast. We don't come here because of our status, because of our wealth, and because of our achievements. We come because the host of the banquet invites us, Jesus himself. One afternoon in 1953, reporters and officials gathered at a Chicago railroad station to await the arrival of the 1952 Nobel Peace Prize winner. He stepped off the train, a giant of a man, 6'4" with bushy hair and a large mustache. As cameras flashed, city officials approached with hands outstretched and began telling him how honored they were to meet him. He thanked them politely and then, looking over their heads, asked if he could be excused for a moment. He walked through the crowd with quick steps until he reached the side of an elderly black woman who was struggling as she tried to carry 2 large suitcases. He picked up the bags in his big hands and, smiling, escorted the woman to her bus. As he helped her aboard, he wished her a safe journey. Meanwhile, the crowd had tagged along behind him. He turned to them and said, "Sorry to have kept you waiting." That man was Dr. Albert Schweitzer, the famous missionary doctor who had spent his whole life helping the poorest of the poor in Africa. A member of the reception committee said to one of the reporters, "That's the first time I ever saw a sermon walking." May we be sermons walking.